I just finished reading 2 books back to back by the same author. It's a Canadian author by the name of Miriam Toews, not pronounced as it is spelled. And they are both excellent books, but I gotta get one thing off my chest first. Authors, please don't be too cool for punctuation. If a character is talking in your book, please use quotation marks and paragraphs as normal. You don't have to be avant-garde when it comes to punctuation. It makes things difficult for the reader. It might get you the eye of literary critics, but come on, let's keep life as simple as possible. Alright, now that that's out of the way, interestingly enough, My Puny Sorrows was actually recommended to me by one of my favorite fantasy authors, a somewhat local author named Guy Kay, whom I met at a book fair. So I had actually picked up that and a couple of other books at his recommendation, and meanwhile, another good friend who loves books as much as I do lent me her copy of A Complicated Kindness. So that's how I ended up with those 2 books at about the same time. Let's talk about A Complicated Kindness, the first book that I read. It's essentially about a teenage girl who is attempting to break free of the oppressive Mennonite community that she's raised in. I can see why the main character, Nomi, gets compared to Holden Caulfield, J.D. Salinger's character from Catcher in the Rye. They have a similar voice and a similar presentation. What I found particularly hilarious was that Holden Caulfield actually gets mentioned in the book. The main character, in talking about her class assignments, says, "So far in English, I was not allowed to write about Khalil Gibran, Marianne Faithfull lyrics, Marigold Seeds, Holden Caulfield, Nietzsche, Django, Nabokov, preternatural gifts for self-analysis, urges, blowtorches, and now Turkish weddings." There's something kind of funny about a fictional character mentioning another fictional character from a different book. But while it has some humor, it's certainly not a funny book. It's a well-written book and it's interesting, and it's a good read if you have any personal experience with the problems of institutional religion. The second book, My Puny Sorrows, caught me off guard because when I started reading the book, I thought I was reading a continuation of A Complicated Kindness. It was set in the exact same, presumably fictional town. The family that it is based on, character-wise, is a carbon copy of the characters in A Complicated Kindness. It even starts out in the same Mennonite community, and everything is very familiar after reading the first book. However, it progresses to a stage where the characters are older in their lives, and it certainly is not meant to be a sequel in any way. It's a different story with different characters, and different things happen. And this is even a much heavier book than the other. The central theme of My Puny Sorrows is physician-assisted death, which is a topic that I'm particularly passionate about as somebody who has spent a lot of time with very ill and dying people, and as someone who has experienced personally a lot of illness and who has been very close to death a few times myself. But what does make this especially complicated, to borrow the adjective from the other book title, is the fact that it is an exploration of physician-assisted death for mentally ill people. You can see right away what a controversial subject that would be. You know, from my point of view, it would be hard for any compassionate person to argue against the act of mercy that is giving a dying and suffering person agency over their own death. However, we don't often think of psychiatric illness as being terminal, despite the fact that so much psychiatric illness results in suicide, and therefore can be considered terminal illnesses, I suppose. But the cool thing about the book is that it doesn't seek necessarily to find answers, and it doesn't provide answers. What it does is just present questions and explores the issues. And the thing that gives it a real legitimacy is the fact that the author, Miriam Toews, has very personal experience with the things she's talking about. Her own father committed suicide, and then some years later, her only sibling, her sister, committed suicide as well. And in interviews I've seen, she describes All My Puny Sorrows as being autobiographical fiction. So she's very much telling her own story and her own experiences in a fictional format. So the story is deeply personal and very genuine, coming from Miriam Toews. Because of the heaviness of the subject matter and the way the book is written, it felt like a bit more of a slog than a complicated kindness, but on the other hand, it felt like a much deeper and richer book. And there were actually a few particularly poignant things that stood out to me in the book. One of those was the fact that the author draws some comparisons between the treatment of psychiatric patients versus the treatment of cardiology patients, for example. She has one of her characters, one of her aunts, in the cardiology department while her sister is in the psychiatric ward. And at one point she comments by saying, "I smiled and nodded, and I murmured to the nurse passing me that my aunt was the king of the jungle, so please handle her with care. The nurse laughed and squeezed my arm. Nurses in cardio are far more playful and friendly than they are in psych." She also says this about psychiatry. Imagine a psychiatrist sitting down with a broken human being saying, "I am here for you. I am committed to your care. I want to make you feel better. I want to return your joy to you. I don't know how I will do it, but I will find out, and then I will apply 100% of my abilities, my training, my compassion, and my curiosity to your health, to your well-being, to your joy. I am here for you, and I will work very hard to help you, I promise. If I fail, it will be my failure, not yours. I am the professional, I am the expert. You are experiencing great pain right now, and it is my job and my mission to cure you from your pain. I am absolutely committed to your care. I know you are suffering. I know you are afraid. I love you. I want to cure you, and I won't stop trying to help you. You are my patient. I am your doctor. You are my patient." Imagine a doctor phoning you at all hours of the day and night to tell you that he or she had been reading some new stuff on the subject of whatever and was really excited about how it might help you. Imagine a doctor calling you in an important meeting and saying, "Listen, I'm so sorry to bother you, but I've been thinking really hard about your problem and I'd like to try something completely new. I need to see you immediately. I'm absolutely committed to your care. I think this might help you. I won't give up on you." Those of us who have had personal experiences with psychiatrists can see the irony and the humor and the sadness in the way she relates this particular approach. She also makes this statement in the book: "I feel safe in the car, alone and protected. I can see people milling about in the parking lot, but they can't see me. Well, they can, but they think I'm insane, so they look away, which is the same as being invisible." I think it's a fascinating truth that so many times people who are mentally ill are almost invisible. People don't like to look at that, and so they pretend they're not there. One thing Miriam did in this book was steal one of my catchphrases that I thought I had made up. The main character is talking to her sister about quotations, and she says, "You put the fist in pacifist?" That's my line. I put the fist in pacifist. Well, so much for making up original sayings. At another point in the book, the main character is trying to help her suicidal sister with her perspective on life. And she says, "I reminded her that she had her sight. She could see. She'd always been able to see, but she told me she'd never adjusted to the light. She'd just never developed a tolerance for the world. Her inoculation hadn't taken. Reality was a rusty leg trap." I really liked that sentence. Reality was a rusty leg trap. Seems to make sense to me somehow. My favorite line came toward the end of the book, though, where two of the characters are going down the street at night. Will carried Zoe on his back and zoomed around on the sidewalk, and she laughed and bounced up and down and lost one of her flip-flops. So we had to go back and retrace our steps in the dark, which I suppose is the meaning of life. We had to go back and retrace our steps in the dark, which I suppose is the meaning of life. Love it. So yeah, it's a great book. You just have to remember it's a novel. You're not going to get any answers to hard questions, but you're going to get an important topic covered with gentleness and humor, and a great deal of humility and introspection. So if it's a topic that you think you can handle, it's certainly worth the read. Oh hey, Josh here, just wanting to thank you for sticking around right through to the end of the video. I really appreciate that. If you want to support me, you can give me a thumb up on the video. It would be great if you would share this video with one book lover in your life, and hopefully I'll see you next time. Cheers! I can see why the central character of the book gets compared to Holden Caulfield. Wait. What the fuck's his name? Okay. Who the fuck is Holden Caulfield from again? That makes you pause and go, well, yeah, that's kind of funny. There's something quite funny about a fictional character mentioning another fictional character to which she's compared by the critics, by the people. Those of us who have had experience... Ah, shit, I lose one of my bookmarks.